This is Ryden, and you're listening to Mike the Birdman Dodd and the rest of the Twig crew right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. So watch out.
You gotta be kidding me. You're gonna risk the entire mission for a mental defective dressed as a court jester.
It's coming from a guy that wears a toilet seat on his head.
We don't leave one of our own behind.
You're okay with this?
No, but I've been around Flag when he's got rag in his mouth.
All right, we'll enter through the third floor, go into the inner staircase, and then down to the cellar where they usually keep their detainees.
It's not a toilet seat. It's a beacon of freedom.
Ratatouille, what do you got?
Third floor, hallways clear. Abner?
There doesn't seem to be any incoming traffic.
Bird.
Now it. Stay off the comp.
Colonel, I got a clean shot on the only one in the office. Just give the word.
Fire on 3, 2.
What are you guys doing?
Well, we're here to save you.
You were gonna save me?
It was a really good plan, too.
Well, I can go back inside and you can still do it.
That's patronizing.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
Harley Quinn.
Blood sport.
Dr. Banner, melted by gamma rays.
Brainiac, what is it? Look, I just want some pants. A decent pair of pants.
Big man in a suit of armor. Take that off. What are you?
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
It's morphin' time!
Put an ad on the front page. Cash money for a picture of Spider-Man. He doesn't want to be famous, and I'll make him infamous.
My spider senses are starting to tingle.
Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said,
It's clobbering time.
Hello, everybody. It is I, JT from Saskatoon. Welcome back to TWIG Sunday Funnies, where we talk about almost everything at this point involving comic books and comic book media. With me, as always, is the Captain Boomerang to my Rick Flag, Mike the Birdman Dodd. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. And honestly, Captain Boomerang is probably my favorite member of the squad because I fucking love Jai Courtney. And it's honestly the role I think he's perfect for. But we'll get into that later.
Yeah, the role he was born to play, and certainly not Jack McClane, because we don't talk about that fifth movie.
Or, Kyle Reese in Terminator Genesis. Although, to be fair, I like that movie. Fight me.
Well, then we're going to have a fight.
But yeah, so as JT has alluded to, it's time to talk about The Suicide Squad, which came out last month on HBO Max. It was also available in cinemas and on premium VOD, depending on where you are in the world. It wasn't hard to see this movie, though. Getting out to see it in theaters right now is an adventure, to say the very least, with what's going on in the world. It's not Joker gas. It's something a lot worse. The purpose of this show is to kind of talk about the movies, because there are two of them. There's a couple of animated ones, which I don't really remember, but I can tell you right now they are worth watching. And we're going to talk a little bit about the comic, because JT had a bunch of prep for me, but just the way life has been going the last month. And if you follow any of my stuff on social media, which is at Birdman Dodd, I'm involved with some local politics. So I've been remarkably busy because we're under a federal election campaign right now for a couple of more weeks. So yeah, it's been interesting. But anyway.
Yeah. So the Suicide Squad, we're going to get into the Suicide Squad in a little bit. Go over the comics first, just kind of give everyone a primer. Now, the Suicide Squad that was featured in 2016's Suicide Squad and 2021's The Suicide Squad was not the first version of that title to appear in DC Comics. The original appeared for several issues in The Brave and the Bold, which was before it became Batman and insert DC superhero here, the team up book that it became for the vast majority of its run. The original Suicide Squad was a government covert operations group led by Rick Flag Sr. And it was very much in line like some classic DC titles from the Silver Age, like the Sea Devils or the Challengers of the Unknown, where they're ordinary humans thrust into these very wacky X-Files-esque organization, or not organizations,
adventures.
That's the word I was looking for, because I am smart, SMRT. And it only ran for, I think, a handful, like less than 10 issues, all said and done. And it really doesn't affect the current title, which created, in 1986 by John Ostrander and Len Wein. Originally, now the Suicide Squad, as we know it, originally appeared in the 1986 Legends miniseries, which was basically Darkseid from Apocalypse trying to run a smear campaign to destroy the reputations of Earth's heroes. And this is like not even a year after, or within the year of concluding the original Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get into the original, Suicide Squad by Ostrander from the 80s. And this is something that was steeped in political intrigue and very much based on what was going through the headlines of the news in the States, like the Iran Contra scandals, political machinations. We're trading this political prisoner for this captured spy. Really mature, and it wasn't marketed as a mature title. It's just very mature writing.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, like they had I think it was like 60 some issues, the original run. And from there, it just kind of, they stuck around in the background. Every now and again, Amanda Waller would show up and she's still running the squad, which most of the original squad from the Ostrander series was led by Rick Flag Jr., played by Joel Kinnaman in both of the live action movies, and usually featured at least Ben Turner, aka Bronze Tiger, Digger Harkness, aka, also my favorite member of the squad in any medium, Captain Boomerang, and the Enchantress, but more the Silver Age version and not the
modern version.
The methed out backwoods sorceress looking deal that Cara Delevingne played in that original movie. Because I honestly didn't know whether I was attracted to her or scared, like, out of my pants.
It was such a cool design, but you didn't quite know how to feel. There's one effect, and I love it, when she transforms in the first movie and she says Enchantress, and the black hand appears from under her like sleeve and like it flips it over.
Yeah, it's and just, like through her hand in that.
Yeah, it looks like that's such an incredible shot. And I was when I was watching the movie last night, just to refresh my kind of memory for this, I like the Suicide Squad, Suicide Squad more than I remember. I remember walking out of that movie being kind of mad, but we'll get to that. So continue.
So, and I've rattled on here a little bit about the comics and these characters, but the concept is Amanda Waller is this government agent who runs a Black Ops squad designated Task Force X, but it is called the Suicide Squad by its members because it's American DC Comics and Marvel, and we'll get to that later, is an embarrassment of riches of incarcerated supervillains. So Waller gets the idea, goes to certain villains who have certain skills, and says, "Hey, you do these missions, you get time off your sentence, and if you survive, because they might die in the mission, and if they ever try to GTFO, they either have originally it was these giant like bomb bracelets that they would wear, and eventually they got upgraded to implanting an explosive in their necks, and that's just the way it's run for 30 plus years, since like the late 80s, like that. Now we're talking, when you look at that original movie, that's more or less based on some of from the New 52 forward Suicide Squad titles, because you had the original 80s series, you had a pretty forgettable run. It's only like 12 issues in the early aughts. They had a mini series called Raise the Flag, because in the original Suicide Squad, Rick Flag dies like halfway through the series.
Oh wow!
Because the tagline for the new film, "Don't get attached." And
which,
sadly,
by the way, folks, full spoilers from here on out, just so you know.
We should just play a spoiler alert at the beginning of every episode. It's not like we're really coy about stuff.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, go on. Continue.
So So the New 52 incarnation of the Suicide Squad, which encounters basically like the last 4 volumes, because there's about 6 or 7 different volumes, and the last 4 or 5 volumes are like New 52 onward. And that's where you got Rick Flag, Harley, Boomer, Killer Croc, and Deadshot. And you get smattering other like original villains created just for the series, and other DC villains that either do or do not make it. And we go from there. Now, as Mike said, there's also, in addition to the 2 animated films, there's was it Batman Assault on Arkham, which is set pre Batman Arkham Asylum in that continuity of Batman, because it's firmly set in the Arkham Asylum games universe. There's the Hell to Pay, which was part of the DC animated movie universe, which basically started from Flashpoint Paradox and goes to Justice League Dark Apocalypse War.
Yeah, which is fucking awesome, but brutal.
Oh, it's messed up.
It's really good though.
Oh yeah. We got to mention my all-time, and this is in my top-time favorite episodes of the Justice League animated series, was Task Force X, because Amanda Waller was a villain and then an associate of the Justice League in that series, and she gets, Rick Flag Jr.'s voiced by Adam Baldwin, like Jane from Firefly. You get Clock King, Plastique, who's an explosive expert, Deadshot voiced by Michael Rosenbaum from like Lex Luthor from Smallville, Captain Boomerang, although he's not nearly as much of a sleaze in his animated or in the Justice League animated series. The reason I keep rambling and ping-ponging back and forth like this, there's so much to have fun with in just the idea, because this is like the classic film The Dirty Dozen, but with supervillains.
Yeah, I mean, I was I remember when the ad campaign came out for this movie, and it's honestly, you can debate me on this, but the original 2016 Suicide Squad trailer was one of the best trailers I'd ever seen. It was remarkably well cut together, but that's the problem. But I remember being like, okay, this sounds kind of awesome. It's like bad guys, but they do good things, and they may not all make it out, because when you watch a superhero movie, typically most people have like plot armor or something, like something will protect them, so at the end of the movie so and so survives, or you would assume.
Well, it's yet
in the Suicide Squad, holy shit, was I wrong. Because there are some characters I did not expect to die.
Yeah. So let's get right into that. So the basic plot of the Suicide Squad is Task Force-esque, is this government operation using supervillains to run covert ops. In the initial team we see in the film, it's got, I know his character's name is Blackguard, but it's Pete Davidson. And I both love and hate this man, because he's really
done some pretty funny stuff, but he's also pretty cringe too.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying. So you got Pete Davidson, Yondu, or Michael Rooker, who's playing one of my favorite villains from it was part of Gail Simone's run in the Birds of Prey comic. This guy, Savant, who he's like an expert strategist, combat expert, wannabe vigilante, but he's also a sociopath, and he has this fucked up brain chemistry that he cannot create linear memories. Like his brain's wiring is so messed up, he cannot, he might not see somebody for like 5 minutes, and it's been like 3 weeks in his head.
Oh wow.
And they don't even really get into that much with Rooker, because after this initial assault led by Harley and Flag, everyone's wiped out except for Harley, Flag, and the detachable kid, played by the patron saint of all that is good and right in this world, Nathan Fillion, who I found out is that character was created pretty much for the film, but is wholesale based on a character from the Legion of Superheroes called Arm Fall Off Boy.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of funny how DC gave him carte blanche to do whatever the hell he wanted. And he's like, I want arm fall off boy, but make it more interesting. Because
And
I remember when people were talking about this movie, they're like, who the hell is TDK? And we couldn't figure out who the hell it was. And then in the first 5 minutes of the movie, you find out in a very peculiar way.
yeah, what's his power? He has the power of the Three Stooges.
Yeah, pretty much. It's
So
goofy as shit.
yeah, so Flag and his team land on the beach in Corto Maltese, which originally created for The Dark Knight Returns in the 1980s by Frank Miller before he lost his damn mind. And for years, I thought it was a real place, because the first time I ever heard of Corto Maltese was in Batman '89. You know, because Vicky Vale was there taking pictures of the Revolution, and for years I thought it was a real place, and it was like, wow, it just made up. So they land on this beach. They're essentially a distraction for the real Suicide Squad. That's for the real mission, which is King Shark, Ratcatcher 2,
Peacemaker,
John Cena, Polka Dot Man, and Bloodsport, played by the next man to play James Bond, in my opinion, Idris Elba.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And they're there to reconnoiter and find out what the hell this Project Starfish is. Spoiler alert, if you didn't see the trailer, it's Starro the Goddamn Conqueror, which is one of... Starro the Conqueror is... I love this concept of a giant telepathic
squid thing.
Starfish from outer space, on the same level that I love MODOK from Marvel Comics, because it's big, it's bold, it makes absolutely no sense. But God, it warms the subcockles of my heart. And by the end of it, the squad have defeated Starro. They've saved the world. They managed to get one over in this film, an even more psychotic version of Amanda Waller, played by
Viola Davis.
I was going to say Fiona Davis. Damn. Viola Davis, who loses her damn mind at one point in the movie. And they're basically set free into the world because they've got this blackmail on her. Now, that initial assault on the beach, you'd think, seeing all the character posters I've seen on the internet and all around, don't get attached. They're telling us, don't get attached to these characters.
Yeah, this movie had one of the best marketing campaigns I can think of, because going back to Michael Rooker, who plays Savant, he was advertised in a lot of the media leading up to this. I remember just them really pushing Michael Rooker. I remember Jai Courtney doing a bunch of stuff. I remember it was a big deal for the girl who plays Mongal to be advertised in this. And there was a lot of hype going into all these characters, and Pete Davidson as Blackguard and stuff like that. There was a lot of characters you've probably never heard of. I didn't know who the hell Javelin was.
Lame ass Green Lantern villain.
I'm like, all right, fine, fucking whatever. So the fact that half these characters are dead in 15 minutes.
Well, yeah, because it's my boy Boomer. First of all, he gets the world's worst acupuncture when just a whole bunch of wood shrapnel is just driven into his body, and then he's blown the fuck up by this crashing helicopter. Mongal, who's the yellow-skinned villain from The Death of Superman, or Return of the Superman. This is his daughter, who dies horribly in pain, and I was honestly very upset, I think it would be the right word, to hear her screaming while she's trapped underneath this burning helicopter. Savant tries to tries to run away, gets his head blown up, Javelin's killed. You think TDK's dead, but he's technically still alive.
Yep, and Nathan Fillion has gone online when they were doing a live watch with James Gunn, as of this recording about a week ago. And he's like, I'm not dead, just so you people know.
Yeah, but he's going to show up with cyborg arms or something, because I'm pretty sure his natural arms have been
shot
destroyed.
To shit. Yeah.
Oh, the Weasel, if you saw that mid-credit scene, the Weasel is still alive.
Which is kind of funny because he was like a joke character to like begin with, and that's played by Sean Gunn, who I know Sean Gunn not from the Marvel movies. I knew of his work on the Gilmore Girls where he played Kirk, who was like the town's handyman slash weirdo, and he's a wonderfully funny actor.
Yeah, I honestly haven't seen 1 minute of Gilmore Girls. I just know him from playing Kraglin, who's like my favorite supporting character from the Guardians movies. Like, if you don't know who Kraglin is, folks, he's the guy that does like the yelling and thumping his chest during Yondu's funeral scene at the end of Volume 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings a tear to my eye every time because I lost my dad years ago and I still miss him. So when I have like really schmaltzy father-son things like that in a movie, it gets me. So all these characters are dead except for Flag, who's captured by some rebels. Harley's captured by the coup government, who have just taken over Cotel Maltese. Something stuck back there. And then Bloodsport and his team are trying to get to Project Starfish and find out what the hell's going on. Surprise, surprise, you find out it's actually part of the American intelligence apparatus, that the Americans started this and then they lost control of it some point in the past, and they've been trying to cover it up ever since.
Mm-hmm.
And it's led by it's Gaius Greaves, the Thinker. It's Peter Capaldi, who I don't want to say he's wasted in this movie. Like, whenever he's on screen, he gives it his all.
He's basically evil Doctor Who, or he's like, it's kind of fucked up because I'm watching Capaldi as the Thinker, and I'm thinking, okay, so this is a mix from Malcolm, from I can't remember the name of that show in Britain where he swears a lot.
Yeah.
The grandiose nature of the Doctor plus the villainy of the Thinker. Like, honestly, if Capaldi was going to play a DC villain, they couldn't have picked a better one.
Yeah.
For him, honestly.
Yeah. So they get there, and eventually it just goes to show that you find when they find out that the American government is behind Starro, because Starro was originally brought to Earth on a covert NASA mission, where you find out that he poops out of an armpit gill like copies of himself that like face hug people, and they become like of this hive mind. And in like one of the grosser scenes in the movie, like where you see the Thinkers try to take a starfish off of this one prisoner, and it's ripped like this starfish shaped hole in the guy's face.
They also have starfishes on people in various stages of experimentation. One guy has no legs, but the bones are still there. You find out that it doesn't matter if they can rip this thing off your face within a few seconds. Once it touches you, you're effectively dead.
Yeah.
Which I totally, because see, the first time I ever came across Starro is I think it was an episode of Superman, the animated series. And that's how I know it. But I know the cover, the very famous cover with Starro and all that. And
the original Justice League in The Brave and the Bold, where they first debuted. Yeah, no, I remember you see him, like it's a blink and you miss it cameo in an episode of Superman TAS. And then there's the 2-part episode, The Call, in Batman Beyond, where Terry is called to join the Justice League Unlimited, where Superman's voiced by Shooter McGavin. Because Mike Blanchard would literally tear down the internet if I didn't mention that.
Oh,
and he tries to take over the Justice League and escape into the world and possess everybody. My first exposure to Starro was in the Grant Morrison, Howard Porter run of JLA in the 90s, when I was really getting into collecting comics. And it went from being like the Starro spores, you can get them off in DC Comics and they won't kill you. And they don't like kill you the instant they attach. It's just, you're part of the hive mind until you're freed. But their way Howard Porter designed the Starro, they were very much like face huggers. Like, you got like the tip of each star point's got this claw that like will dig into you, and they got like the little teeth sucker in the middle of on the back side of the eye. And it was just creepy as all fuck. But yeah, so the squad gets to Jotunheim, which is taken directly from the original Suicide Squad, from the very first Suicide Squad storyline. And when Flag finds out that the American government's part of this, he's going to take the info on this hard drive. He's going to show it to the world. And that's when John Cena finally turns heel. He's never turned heel in wrestling, but he turned heel here because his Peacemaker, in his own words, is the douchiest Captain America possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't disagree with that, because when John Cena, when he's not doing an interview or he's wrestling, man, he can play like an asshole so well. And I was surprised at how much I enjoyed his performance in this movie because of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like John Cena brings a lot of charisma to the stuff that he does now. And when you let him be funny and when you let him do both at the same time, funny and action, he doesn't have the charisma of The Rock, but it's a different style.
He has a charisma all his own.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's John Cena and then there's The Rock. And I don't know, it's some of the breakthrough people coming through WWE. I am impressed because The Rock has been a force of nature for years. John Cena's really come into his own in the last 5. Dave Bautista was unexpectedly good.
Yeah, like my MVP in that first Guardians movie, and I was very surprised at that.
Like, I'm hoping they let The Miz play Johnny Cage in an upcoming Mortal Kombat sequel. Let The Miz be the next person to truly break out. Yeah, because he's done those Marine movies and he's done some other shit, but he hasn't had a chance to do something super mainstream yet. Yeah. And I think he can do it. You just need to give him the right role, and Johnny Cage certainly fits that. But I digress.
I mean, name one other person that is so perfectly Johnny Cage in Hollywood. I'll wait.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you get back to the movie, like, I mean, again, don't get attached. Flag he gets a piece of glass shoved into his heart by Peacemaker, who's observed by Ratcatcher 2, who I was surprised at how she became like the heart and soul of the team.
Like, and I thought, what a weird pick for the squad. Yeah. Ratcatcher 2. I mean, of all the things. And that's the thing that I liked about this movie, because as a comic nerd, there's like, oh, that's Hobgoblin 2, or that's Green Goblin 2, but that's not Harry, or that's not Norman Osborn, that's Harry Osborn, so it's Green Goblin 2, or that's this, that, and the other thing, because there's different variants of the same villain. They'll have just a slightly different name. And the fact that they called her Ratcatcher 2, like, oh, what happened to Ratcatcher 1? Oh, he's my dad, and he's dead.
Played by Taika Waititi.
Which a lot of people thought he was going to be King Shark for a very long time. And I was very surprised that it wasn't. By the way, King Shark, Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, the voice of Sylvester Stallone. What's his name? Steve Agee, who plays John Economos, who in the comic books was the warden of Belle Rive Penitentiary. And he's that big guy. Oh, we got a kaiju up in this bitch. That's him. He did the suit, like the motion capture for King Shark. And when I first heard King Shark was there, and I heard Steve Agee was like playing him as like a stand-in for the mocap, I was like, oh, and I love his comedy. I love it. I want to hear his King Shark. And then I heard Taika was in here, and okay, he would do, because it might be like Korg, but don't let that bother you. That's the best Taika I can do. and then when I heard Stallone was involved, because Stallone, Nathan Fillion, and don't tell me, I can remember, it's Michael Rooker. I almost forgot. They're kind of like the De Niro to James Gunn's Scorsese. Like, these guys are in, if he's directing a film, at least one of those guys will have a somewhat sizable part in the film. And I love that. But yeah, Stallone, just, I like, yes, Nanawe, hand.
Bird.
That and the bird line, those are my favorite Like, never before has a character spoken to me on such a profound level.
You know, it's weird. I was actually saying this, I think it was to Blair or Liam or somebody the other day. Sylvester Stallone is going to be remembered for 3 major roles in his life: Rocky Balboa, John Rambo, and you might be saying Judge Dredd is not an unusual pick because the pop culture around that has kind of exploded. I honestly think now in his later years, it's not going to be the Expendables Barney. It's going to be fucking King Shark because the nerds will never let him forget it. But I think that the fact that he did it, and I would assume he had a lot of fun doing it. Like,
well, you could hear it in his voice.
Yeah, new dumb friends. I love it. It's so funny.
Or just that childlike, chuckling when you got like the killer jellyfish when he's running back and forth in front of that giant aquarium, which that's a weird thing to have built into this scientific research center. But then again, it's the thinker and he's experimenting on its starfish from space. But just that, running and like jellyfish. And then I was honestly like, you do not kill King Shark, James Gunn. Because like when the tank breaks and the jellyfish sprout those teeth, I was like, oh shit. I was like, oh, you don't kill my King Shark. Oh, you better not. Oh, thank God he's still alive. And yeah, so like Peacemaker tries to kill Ratcatcher 2. At the same time, Harley, Bloodsport, and another favorite character in this movie was it David Desmalchin as the Polka Dot Man. Now, this man, I love him. I've seen a lot of stuff he's been. He was Abracadabra on the Flash TV series, and he's Kurt in the Ant-Man movies. But the one place that I think he really shined, and this is a little bit of a dark horse choice. I don't know if you've ever seen the series, but there was that MacGyver reboot show that just ended last year or earlier this year. He played this recurring villain called Murdoch, who's like this psychotic assassin who was constantly trying to kill like the new MacGyver. And it was just such a fun, because he's almost playing like the Joker, but not. And it's one of those performances where he just ate every inch of scenery. And it was weird, and I couldn't believe how much I enjoyed this, not nuance, but this not subtle, but this toned down performance as Polka Dot Man, who, unlike the comic book character, who's literally a guy wearing a suit that's covered with these polka dots that he peels off, and one turns into a blowtorch, or one turns into a buzz saw, or one just is a reflective mirror. That's Polka Dot Man in the comics. Was this one, his mother experimented on him in an effort to turn him into a superhero, and now he has an intergalactic STD where if he doesn't puke out these multicolored polka dots twice a day, he'll die.
Which I thought that was such an interesting update to this character. I'm thinking this should be the goofiest fucking character in the movie besides Arms Fall Off Boy or whatever. But no, they made him legitimately interesting, giving him enough of a background, admittedly, which is hilarious when you see all the Suicide Squad dressed up as his mom. Fat Peacemaker is interesting. But yeah, it works so well, because that is an actor. I only knew him from the Dark Knight, which it's sad that his character's dead in the Suicide Squad, because if anybody was to survive, I would have picked him. I really would have. Just because he was like the OP member of the team outside of King Shark when it comes down to base metahuman abilities.
Yeah, because I mean, when he's got these weird gauntlets that like flip open, they almost look like blinds or something, and he just flings out these polka dots which look like those multicolored like plastic pieces,
bingo things.
Yeah, that's the bingo chips that my grandma used to use, like that. And then these things just like nothing protected, they just burn through everything.
Yeah, you melt and die in a rather unpleasant fashion,
like the evil version of Kirby dots, if you will. So like well, Harley and him and this dude Milton, which I love that whole. He's like, "What are you? He's been with us the whole time." It's like, who? Him? Oh, Milton. And through their shenanigans, the Jotunheim Tower starts collapsing, and eventually, Bloodsport, his piece of the floor collapses right in front of Peacemaker, who's about to try and kill Ratcatcher 2 again. And you just see this, like, the whole movie, him and Peacemaker have this weird, like, competing, like, who's got the cooler kills kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
that was a great bit.
Yeah, he's like, you're what is he? You're making, I forget what the line is. He's like, yeah, but whatever if you're doing, if it's dope as fuck. And then Bloodsport's like, shit, he's right. But they draw down on each other, and it's a reversal of earlier where Peacemaker is like, well, I do better than you because I shoot bullets through the holes that you've made with your bullets, and they don't even touch the other side. And he's taken out, or so we think. And then they get down, and basically their mission's done. But Amanda Waller's telling them to GTFO, and then Bloodsport was like, no, we got to save, like, the Corto Maltesians. And that's the point where Viola Davis loses her shit, and then, like, the Bell Rev staff knock her out and start supporting the squad, because they're all of a sudden the squad is, like, engendered this hell yeah, we're gonna save the day kind of attitude, because Amanda Waller was losing her crap. And that's very rare for that character. Like, in any of the comics I've ever read her in, some of the animated stuff I've seen her in, she's never full-on gone psychotic like that.
No one's ever made her lose her cool or control of a situation.
Yeah. I mean,
she is the threat in the room.
Yeah, she is the wall. Because I think before this, the loudest she ever got was in Assault on Arkham, where she's, no one fucks with the wall, and she hits the button to blow up all the Suicide Squad's bombs, and it only ends up killing, like, Black Spider in that movie. So I love the scene where Bloodsport's drawing down on Starro as he's, like, kaiju rampaging through the capital city, and he's just pulling off, like, these little bits of his suit that all of a sudden expand into bigger bits that he's clipping onto his gun, like an adult R-rated Nerf gun.
Although, if I did have one complaint about Bloodsport, and a lot of people compared him to Deadshot, and, you know, it's hard not to see the potential there to get those two characters. Like, well, I guess Will Smith didn't want to come back, but they wanted another character who's just good with guns.
Yeah.
There's something about the way Idris Elba comes across in that role where his costume doesn't seem to fit the character he's playing. Like, do you kind of get where I'm going with that? Like, just that Death's Head mask with, like, the zombie teeth doesn't seem like something that character would do, or at least to me anyway.
Yeah. And the reason, like, that design, I have no idea where they, other than that they're trying to, because I think up to a certain point Will Smith was supposed to come back, and then I think it was just scheduling. And what they did with Bloodsport, like, instead of being like this great dad, you know, because he meets his, like, you know, it's his illegitimate daughter, and he's like, yeah, the next time you go steal some, bring a lookout. And she's like, you asshole, I need your help, and you're telling me how to be a better criminal. And they have that again, the young
great screaming match.
Yeah. And I lost her name, but the, you know, what, Storm Reed is plays Tyler. Like, she was holding her own against Idris Elba in that scene, which I fucking loved. But the whole idea with him having this nanotech that he has all these weapons and it doesn't look like he has a lot of weapons, that's a visual a visual shorthand for his powers in the comic. Because in the comic, he showed up very early in the John Byrne Superman run post-Crisis, where he had this device implanted in his wrists from, like, LexCorp that he thinks of a shotgun filled with Hellfire shells. A shotgun filled with Hellfire shells will, like, teleport into his hands.
Oh, okay.
And very much like in the comics, and they mentioned in this movie, he shot Superman with a kryptonite bullet. So I think the idea of him pulling stuff out of nowhere and expanding like that's just a visual representation without having to explain that.
Now, going with this, the fact that they name drop Superman, this movie's place in the DC timeline is kind of weird because Harley makes reference to crashing her car into a bank, which conceivably could have happened after Birds of Prey.
Yeah.
They don't really mention the Joker at all. They talk around him. I think Jared Leto was he. I don't know whether he was asked to come back for this movie or not. I think they said no, we don't want you.
Yeah.
Which,
well,
upon second viewing, I think Jared Leto did fine as the Joker. I don't mind him.
His performance, I could have done without the tattoo right across his forehead.
Yeah, like
for some reason that just bothered the hell out of me.
Yeah, the design of the character is weird and it's very jarring, but the performance itself was fine.
Yeah. Like that the smile tattoo in his left hand where he covers his mouth.
I thought that was actually pretty clever.
Yeah, because like behind his hand, he's like, this motherfucker looking at my girl. From that scene with Common, who apparently was playing the DC Extended Universe version of the Tattooed Man.
Yeah, I was like, okay.
Yeah. Now, the idea of this movie, for those at home who don't know, it's considered a soft reboot. There is enough connective tissue that you can consider this a sequel to Suicide Squad 2016 and a part of the greater DC Extended Universe, or it can be its own thing. Now, I think I see it as it's still in that universe, just like Shazam and Aquaman and was like that. No, here's the thing. And this is why I think even more it is a sequel. Have you ever seen the show C-Lab 2021?
Yes.
Okay. So those at home who don't know, C-Lab 2020 was this really, it was like one and done, like 12 episodes in like 1971 or something about a research complex at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. And they have all sorts of like, sci-fi, like serious-minded sci-fi Saturday morning adventures. It
was basically Hanna-Barbera's Sequest DSV.
But they didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, they just hung around in a lab because they could.
So when like Adult Swim and I forget what the production company is behind that, when they do C-Lab 2020, when they're saying it's literally a year later and they've all been stuck in this complex at the bottom of the ocean, and that's why everyone's insane, is because they've all gone mad from isolation. Now, what I mean by this is when you see Rick Flag walk up and shake Savant's hands and his dialogue in the chopper and just overall everything in this movie, Joel Kinnaman, who I have no problem with in the first movie. His performance is fine. There's some scenes which I think were shot earlier in production where he looks like he's a meth addict. And then there's other scenes
he looks
where
a little rough.
And then there's other scenes where he looks perfectly healthy, except for that soul patch goatee combo, which I just wanted to like take that shit off your face.
Let me tell you, he is one character I thought for sure had plot armor.
Yeah.
Because he, in my opinion, is the everyday character, despite being the world's best special ops soldier or whatever.
Yeah.
I just assumed Harley's not going to die because HBO Max and other places are still running the animated series. Joel Kinnaman's character it's like doing Batman and killing Alfred. When you think of the Suicide Squad, you have to have Waller, you have to have Flag. Everybody else, there's probably a tier list of who should be there, but those two are like Batman, Robin, Alfred. You just assume.
Yeah.
So when Peacemaker killed him, I'm like, holy shit.
I was like, WTF. But yeah, so what I was saying is he's broken because you see how he's much more of an action comedy kind of performance here with almost all of his scenes, because he was banging the Enchantress in the first movie, and he probably that relationship ended badly. And think of all like the weird stuff and the bizarre supervillains that he's worked with in like the couple years between the first movie and this. Like, this dude is losing his grip on reality. And especially see at the scene in the bar where they're all like that they're getting all this camaraderie. That's why it hurts so much when Peacemaker killed him, because they had that great scene where they're all hanging out and getting shit-faced and laughing at Polka Dot Man who can barely hold his booze, and Peacemaker was like, hey, get the rat a drink, because Ratcatcher 2's got Sebastian, her little fully trained rat who's like waving hello, and he's trying to make friends with Bloodsport, who's afraid of rats. And then that scene where Waller says like, "Why did you tell me you're afraid? I'm an assassin. Why would I tell you my weaknesses?" and a lot of his performance in scenes like that with Idris Elba, this man has got incredible sense of comedic timing. Like there was this one season show he did on the BBC called Turn Up Charlie, where he plays like a wedding DJ who like becomes a manny for his best friend who, you know, has this daughter, and he's kind of falling in love with his best friend's wife. And it's just, the dude is funny. He can get a laugh out of me. So yeah, we get that scene where he takes out Peacemaker and they go to take out Starro, and it have that really visually beautiful but really weird scene where Harley dives where she pierces Starro's eye with she's been carrying around Javelin's javelin for the entire movie, and the way he gave, "You're the only one worthy of carrying this for," and then he dies and she's like smacking him in the face, carrying it for who? And they kind of set up like it's supposed to be this huge thing, and it really isn't, you know, subverting expectations, and all the rats dive in after her. And
yeah, that was such a really cool shot, and we technically saw that in the trailer, but we didn't know the context of it.
Yeah, and it's, I think it's kind of weird that they essentially one-shotted Starro, because at this point he is the size of Godzilla. Like there is that scene where his like tentacles come out of one arm and he grabs King Shark and he like whips him into a building, and I was like, "Do not kill King Shark, Mr. Gunn." Because there was like several times it's like, I can't help it, I love this guy. And I talk about those visuals. What about the scene where Harley escapes from the Corto Maltese government and you see Harley Vision? What did you think of that?
A very interesting visual choice. I mean, it looked just fucking cool. I mean, there wasn't a lot that I really had to like complain about. Like, honestly, what the fact that Gunn was allowed to do whatever he wanted and really kind of get into the head of Harley, I thought was really interesting. And it's strange because Harley in the first movie, they don't really flesh out. They give her bits and pieces, but Margot Robbie, I don't think, was fully comfortable in that. And then obviously we got Birds of Prey, where is the focal point. She's holding it. She is the character. But here I felt like Harley is now fully realized.
Yeah. Now, I mean, the first movie, she was just there to be eye candy for a large part. I mean, you look at when they have the suiting up scene, and you know, she's in the booty shorts and the crop top shirt and all that. Now, as far as, and you said it several times, like, yeah, DC, Warner Brothers, they let James Gunn almost run completely free. I'm sure there was some rules, but nothing, just, you can't go too crazy, because this is like the hardest R but still fun comic book movie that we've had since the original Deadpool. Now, the reason I think they gave James Gunn such free reign, and this is where I get a little ranty, and I get a little ranty on SJW types, was that kerfuffle, like, was it 4 or 5 years ago, where
he said something not pleasant on Twitter.
Well, like 10 years before, and before it even came out that he said this really nasty stuff, he apologized for that very specifically. But
yeah, I mean,
and then,
you're not wrong. Like, it's one of those things where we live in an era of, I would call it delayed consequence. And some people do apologize for problematic behavior. I mean, I'm sure I've said some really dumb things over the years, but I would like to think I've grown and grown up from it. When I was a young man and, you know, becoming an older person, I realized you can't say stupid shit like that anymore. And you have to take responsibility for it.
I've said stuff like that too. See, one of my main problems with that whole situation is, okay, yeah, people, you can object to what he said, but he has apologized for it, and he is not the man he was. Like, he's made an effort to change. No one questions the fact that somebody either created a bot or literally went spinning through his Twitter history for like 3 weeks to find these few nuggets of dirt. That's what bothers me about these people who do this stuff and act as if they're doing this great thing, and you're really not. You're part of the problem more than being a solution. Now,
let me tell you, there are parts of the comic fandom that I'm not going to name that I don't particularly care for.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't particularly care. Honestly, it's strange. And I brought this up on another show, or maybe I talked with somebody about this, but there's a meme going around on Facebook right now. And it shows, I think it's Daisy Duck or one of the new DuckTales characters. They're sitting in a booth at a diner and they put their hand over a cup of water. And basically the summation of the meme is, keep your toxic fandom bullshit out of my enjoyment of it.
Yeah.
And I wish we could just go back to enjoying these movies. Like, do you remember when the X-Men first came out and Spider-Man and Blade? It was a different world we were in at that time. But since this incident has happened and the infamous Snyder cut, and then we've had problems come out against Joss Whedon in the last couple of years. And even Nathan Fillion, I've heard, has had some unpleasant things happen. It's a very complicated thing, but as long as I believe, and I'm with you on this, if you have truly changed and you've demonstrated that you've changed, make your apologies, acknowledge what happened, promise to do better, be better, and move on. Like, there's no point in dragging someone through the muck for weeks at a time when, like, okay, they've done all they can. They have years of evidence proving they're not this terrible person anymore. Can we move on and move forward?
Yeah.
But somebody always wants their pound of flesh.
Yeah. No, I mean, just like I said, I get a little ranty because that's really sore spot for me. But because of that, James Gunn was famously, fired from Marvel films. Like, they took him off Guardians 3. Warner Brothers were like, you want a job? Yeah. Yoink. No takebacks, Marvel. And, he did this movie, which is honestly one of the most comic booky, almost perfect, opinions may vary, but it's one of the best comic booky movies in the DC canon that have come out yet, like since like Shazam and Aquaman. It's up there. So they were smart to do that. Now, as we kind of start to wind down here, we did talk before, there are two Suicide Squad animated movies in the DC multiverse. There's the aforementioned Assault on Arkham, which I like that movie. I really do. It's the art style. It's like 2 degrees off from where it should be.
Yeah, that one felt awkward. Hell to Pay was a lot better.
Yeah, like Christian Slater is Deadshot. Come on, that was perfect casting. And then you have Vanessa Williams. The first movie when I think of her come to mind, she was the co-lead in the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Eraser. Yep. She voices Amanda Waller. You get who played the Reverse Flash? It was the dude from he was like from the original Hitcher movie. Oh God, that's gonna bother me. They have that. You have characters from like the early Secret 6 animated film or comic book series in this thing, like Scandal Savage, Vandal Savage's daughter. And it's all about the Squad going after this literally get out of hell free card that Amanda Waller wants because apparently she's got cancer and she wants to go to heaven. And through the long and the short of it, there's betrayals because it's a Suicide Squad where Killer Frost, she betrays the team to try and get the card for herself. She's killed in spectacular fashion where she's wrapped up with Copperhead, who's a snake-themed villain, and Amanda Waller blows up his bomb. And it's like, Waller, you bitch, I'll see you in. Boom. But the best part of that movie, just because it's so silly, and I think Mike might know what I'm talking about, is they have Dr. Fate in this film, who is not played by Kent Nelson. He's played by a man named Steel Maxim, who is a stripper.
Oh boy.
The Sorcerer Supreme of DC Comics was at one point played by a stripper. I love these movies.
I mean, honestly, I hope they keep doing more with this because they've got the momentum showing from this movie. Hell, people have even asked the director, David Ayer, can we get your cut of the movie? And Warner Brothers just flat out said no, which is stupid. Just give him a couple of $1 million, get the reels, give him some money to edit, and throw it up on HBO Max. People will watch it.
Yeah.
But to like look at some of the performances across the Suicide Squad, and then I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Viola Davis was born to play Amanda Waller. When I watched, Blair used to watch a show. Blair is my wife, for those of you that don't know. She watched a movie or a television show called How to Get Away with Murder, where she plays this law professor. And it's an interesting show. It ends on a really weird note, but it's interesting. So I remember when the first Suicide Squad came out and they were talking about who to cast as who. And I remember thinking, holy shit, you need Viola Davis. That's Amanda Waller.
Oh, yeah.
Right there. Like, she's got that stone cold attitude.
Yeah, that stone cold, like, poker face. And here's the thing, her performance was as Amanda Waller came at around the same time that they got rid of the Halle Berry version of The Wall, because when they rebooted DC Comics with New 52 and they brought the Suicide Squad in, Amanda Waller it's Halle Berry as a placeholder. Like, it's this, and there's nothing wrong with Amanda Waller being a slim, trim, well put together black woman. It's just when you think Amanda Waller in Suicide Squad, you think of this, middle-aged woman, little heavier, not too flashy.
I picture Oprah, but you don't fuck with this Oprah.
No, you don't fuck with Oprah in general.
Actually, wasn't she considered for this at one point?
Actually, she was. She was on that short list, but we got Viola Davis, which
great pick.
And I've seen a few movies over the years because, Oprah's taken a turn at acting and she's not bad. I think she could have done all right. But you got that. And so what's your question there you had, Mike?
Okay, so my question is, because we have to start kind of wrapping the show up here.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So let's look. If you had to build your own Suicide Squad, you get 3 picks, 1 honorable mention. Who do you pick? And I'm going to go first just because I've been thinking about this since last night. And some of these characters, I don't know if they've ever been a part. I think the one I'm going to talk about first has been. I would pick Deathstroke. He's my leader because he's a capable assassin. He's worked on the side of the good guys. Okay, he's more like an anti-hero, but he's not somebody I'd want to be sleeping next to. You know what I mean? He's likely to kill you as he is to help you. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, I would pick Clayface because he's smart. He knows how to act. He can shapeshift. That might be very valuable if I was a Suicide Squad member to get in the places I'm not supposed to be. I think that'd be fantastic. Another one going along the infiltration route is a Flash villain that I really love, Mirror Master. Because I think that's so cool. Any mirrored surface he can just jump between. He could ride into an armored location on someone's polarized sunglasses if he wanted to. And then, so that's 3, right?
Yeah.
My honorable mention is from Batman Beyond. It's the character known as Ink. Ink is another shapeshifter, but I think there's just something about her abilities as like a thief and other things that might make her a very unique person to have in my squad. Basically, if I was Amanda Waller, if I was the Wall, if my missions don't involve out and out assault where I need full firepower, I want to take the infiltration Solid Snake route to this. So, okay, JT, so my question is to you. Who do you pick for your Suicide Squad? You have 3 members, living or dead. and you could have one honorable mention.
Okay. And I do have that 4, although one caveat I want to add. Whatever our lineup is, Rick Flag and Amanda Waller have to be part of the title.
Yes, they
Guaranteed.
are consistent. Yes.
Okay. So honestly, when I get to my last 2, one of them's for sure going to be a member and the other one's the honorable mention, but I can't decide between the 2.
Okay.
So my first one, guaranteed, the hitter, Hitman.
Okay,
now,
good pick.
Was it Tommy Flanagan was one of the very few popular characters to come out of that horrible Bloodlines Annuals event in the mid-90s. We talked about it on a previous episode. He's got X-ray eyes, telepathy, and he's like one of the best hitman in the Cauldron, which is like, imagine Hell's Kitchen, but on crank and in the DC universe. And that's what the Cauldron is. So he is not a nice man, but he looks up to Superman, and like, think about that. Like, the worst of the worst, but hey, Superman's all right. Number 2, for mind games and also a unique chemical skill set, Scarecrow.
Good
Dr.
pick.
Jonathan Crane.
I considered him.
And if I could specifically put one version of Scarecrow, it would be the version voiced by the great John Noble, who played Walter Bishop on Fringe, from the Arkham Knight game.
Okay.
Like, with like the messed up face mask and the Freddy Krueger syringe glove. Now, these last 2, because I really like what they bring to the table, again, but I can't decide. They're both the 3rd spot and an honorable mention. First is Vandal Savage. The immortal.
Isn't he like super powerful?
Well, no, he's not super powerful. He's super old and a wealth of experience, because he's a Cro-Magnon man who was mutated by a radioactive meteorite who has lived to the modern day. He was Julius Caesar. He was Genghis Khan. He was like some of these great conquerors in history. Like, he's lived for over 100,000 years, whatever the Cro-Magnon, however long ago Cro-Magnons existed. And so he has this wealth of experience, which I think would be kind of beneficial. Plus, he's been everywhere. He's done everything and everyone. He knows literally thousands of people in every port of call the squad might go to. And the other one is a character who came out in Wonder Woman in the 90s, Artemis, who is kind of introduced as not quite the anti-Wonder Woman, but she's this redheaded Amazon from this lost tribe that lives in the desert, somewhere in the Arabian desert, I believe. And I mean, she's as strong as Diana, as fast and as tough as Diana. She also doesn't give as much of an F as Diana does, so she's more likely to go along with like assassination missions, or you have to kill this innocent to get the mission done, sort of thing. So I think she'd be willing to do at least the original version of Artemis. I mean, since then, so much has happened, but I think she would be a good fit for the squad as well. Now, just as we quickly wrap up here, Mike had asked me off mic, folks, about whether Marvel has ever done anything like this, and they've actually done it 2 times in their history. Now, originally there was a 9-issue run of a comic, which was a spin-off of Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos in the 70s, called Combat Kelly and the Deadly Dozen. And it's essentially Marvel's version of the Dirty Dozen. These dozen or so convicts from the military prisons who served during World War II to take on these dangerous missions. And most of them are dead by the end of the series, but granted, it lasted less than a year. Now, are you familiar with the Thunderbolts in Marvel, Mike?
I've heard of them, and I this is what I understand about them. They're a team run by the government, controlled by General Thunderbolt Ross, and he recruits people out of the Raft, and they take on like Dark Avengers code names or something. Or do I have this completely wrong?
You got it a little muddled up. Now, the original Thunderbolts came out just after the Avengers and the Fantastic Four were thought to be dead in the 90s when they were doing the Heroes Reborn stuff. And it was originally led by Baron Zemo and some of the Masters of Evil, but they took on heroic personas. And after a few years, in the early aughts, around just after Civil War, they brought the title back, or saying that they did a soft reboot of the title, where after Civil War, Norman Osborn, who had been outed as the Green Goblin, but was then put in control of the Thunderbolts, which is now this very much like the Suicide Squad sort of team, because you got Bullseye, Radioactive Man, Songbird, who was a former member of the Thunderbolts from the original team, Swordsman, Venom, when Venom was Mac Gargan with the symbiote. And they kind of enforced like the darker, shadier parts of the Superhuman Registration Act. And the Thunderbolts went along with Norman Osborn when he became like the Nick Fury of Marvel during the Dark Reign storyline. And after that, when you had the Heroic Age, Luke Cage took over the Thunderbolts. And this is when they were straight up Marvel's Suicide Squad. He goes to the raft. He's got guys like Juggernaut, Crossbones, Man-Thing is part of the team because his powers allow him to teleport the team wherever. Their handler is U.S. Agent, who's now missing a leg and one of his hands.
The fuck?
Yeah. And they bring in some like deep cut Marvel villains down the run, and eventually the title splits into two storylines, which eventually becomes two different titles. You have a bunch of the Thunderbolts who get lost in time, who are kind of quantum leaping around, and then they get the Dark Avengers, which kind of ends with a wet fart, and it's not a very good comic. Now, kind of come to the end of the episode. If you were to recommend, I think we're going to give a hard recommend to 2021 Suicide Squad. Which of the animated films are you going to say is an absolute must watch, Mike?
I would honestly recommend Hell to Pay, because if you've seen the 2021 Squad, you know exactly what the kind of setup is. But here you're getting enough of a fresh lineup that the idea is still familiar to you, and you could go in pretty easy. Although, if you were going to recommend, if I was going to recommend something else, I would recommend the extended cut of the original movie. I don't think it's as bad as people remember. I really don't. And
it's got its good and bad points.
Yeah, like there's some fun stuff in there. Plus, I never thought I'd ever see the day when Killer Croc was on screen. So yeah,
and I can't pronounce the actor's name, and I'm not going to insult him to try, but it's the guy that played Heavy Duty in G.I. Joe: Rise of Cobra.
Okay.
If I was to hard recommend anything, it's definitely Hell to Pay. Now, part of the comics that I gave Mike to read, folks, was
which, by the way, thank you for the access to your comics.
Yeah, man, for that. Anytime. So it's from the third Suicide Squad title. Basically, it's the DC Rebirth era. You read the first couple arcs, and then it gets into a crossover with it's Justice League versus Suicide Squad, where at one point Amanda Waller does capture the League, and I think she tries to put bombs in them, but ultimately decides not to. And then they end up teaming up to fight Max Lord and his anti-Suicide Squad, which has like Dr. Polaris and Lobo, and I'm talking the original main man, dirty biker Lobo, not that pretty boy Edward Cullen looking mofo that they tried to pass off to us with the New 52. Yes, it's a thing.
I tried to forget that, and
I'm sorry.
Me.
Oh, please. We it's how we show love. We cause mental scars all the time. Now, that's it for the Sunday Funnies for this month, folks. I don't know what we're going to do next month, but considering it's spooky season,
well, I think we're probably going to do a shorter show on Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, because I've known about this character for years, because I've always known the cover of his premiere issue. Just for some reason, that art is very striking to me. So as of this recording, I literally saw this on opening night in a surprisingly full theater. So I'm glad that I got out now as opposed to later.
Yeah. I saw it opening night as well. I would like to do something for spooky season.
Oh God, count on it. Count on
it. But yeah, we will be talking about Shang-Chi, and I love the fact that Simu Liu is the proper pronunciation. He was very specific about that, and I love the fact that he's very insistent, but he's not being an ass about, Asian representation and the proper way to say names. I like it when somebody's upfront about stuff like that, but they're not being a dick.
Yeah, like honestly, it was pretty cool, but we will talk about that. So you may get 2 episodes of this during the month of September as we play catch up. So anyway, guys, I've been Mike the Birdman, joined with JT
from Saskatoon. You can find me on most of the socials at JT from Saskatoon, all one word, as well as every week on the Comic Connoisseurs podcast with my co-hosts Ben Carver and Red Ink.
Awesome, guys. So please make sure if you can support your local comic book shops, do so. Otherwise, you can legally buy and download comics via any number of publisher apps, stuff like that. So support the industry. It's really important to do so. But as I often say at the end of Twig, be kind, rewind, be excellent to each other, wear a mask, get vaccinated, be a good person, look out for each other. So we'll catch you guys again next time right here on TWIG's Sunday Funnies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.
What was that? I should kill everyone and escape? Sorry. The voices. I'm kidding. That's not what they really said.